Hi, Mitchell Levy here, global credibility expert, and I get the pleasure to talk with amazingly cool people about who they are and how they live their values on the show, Leaders Living Their Values. And Mark Samuel is no exception. So, Mark, who are you?
Ah, thanks for inviting me, Mitchell. This is an awesome opportunity, and I'm just so glad to be here. And just to give you a little background about me, it's so interesting because I think one of the most important times in my whole life was going to Disneyland. As a kid, I loved Disneyland.
Nice.
And I'll tell you though, the thing that I loved about it was I saw all these people from literally around the world, all different cultures, and everybody's getting along. And my comment to my parents was, how come we just can't live this way in our entire world? Like this, if we can all be jammed together in crowds and all get along, why can't we just do that all the time? Of course, that was my young mind. And then as I grew up, to me it became further accentuated when I played baseball and I played music, because once again there were people from all different walks of life all on the same team, and all we had to do was focus on our execution, really learn our place, show up and do the best we can and support each other. And it was wonderful experience. And for me, that's exactly what I think organizations need to do. I mean, it would solve the diversity issue, it would solve the execution issue. It's like, how do we learn from what we gained as children, really, growing up in places like Disneyland and baseball and music and dance and whatever else that we're all involved in?
Oh, by the way, the coolest thing anyone could do is take a trip to the magical world that way. One of the things that people and companies do is they take you there on a guided tour and explore what would this mean for your company. But once again, let's go back to Mark Samuel. Dude, who are you? Business, pleasure, like who is Mark?
Well, I'm really all about supporting businesses and creating that kind of environment I always dreamed of as a kid. One where people are succeeding, that we're all getting along, we're working together, we're achieving for the sake of improvement, improving ourselves and improving the organization and serving our customers. It's like, to me, it's like that's part of community in organizations, whether that's community within a city or it's community within a country or community within an organization. If we're all treating each other well and we all create really good results, then we all have a great life. It's not, there's no separation between person and business. So for me, I'm always looking for organizations that are looking for a cure to the dysfunction that's going on within their organization that's preventing them from optimal performance and optimal culture.
By the way, I love how you slipped in, for those who know me, the CPOP, that customer point of possibilities. Marx's organizations looking for a cure.
Yeah.
So cool. All right,
Yeah.
before we jump into that, because that one we could really unravel. Tell me how personally, who are the values that represent? Who are you? How do you live your personal life? That sort of thing.
I'll tell you the value that has really become a core part of my work is accountability, but not accountability in the way that it's usually thought of, where we're accountable to somebody else and it's all about how, if I don't perform perfectly, then I'm accountable and I get punished. None of that. That's all nonsense in my viewpoint. Really, what accountability is, first of all, can I count on myself? And that means I have to know what I'm counting on myself for. And that means with my family, for my children, for my work, for my team. It's like, what am I what how am I to show up in the best way I can show up, and can I count on myself? And how do I stay in a learning mode to continue bettering myself to do that? And then within an organization, within a family, how do we create an environment where people can count on each other? That gets back to my Disneyland, my sports. It's like we all had an environment where we can count on each other. I don't have to be perfect. All I have to do is show up and be my best, and everyone's going to help me be even better. And I'm going to be doing the same for them. And we're all in it in the same way. To me, that's the game that I want to be in. That is like brings joy to me whenever I see people showing up in their diversity and being accountable for making everything better. That's what I love.
What do you do for fun outside of work?
It's interesting because in how I am today, as old as I am, I've gotten completely away from team sports and now I like golf and I
Nice.
love music still. So
Oh,
for
cool.
me, I play drums. So I love, again, that whole rhythm, sitting back and really being part of the groove. And at the same time, I've recently taken up golf, which I absolutely love and adore. And quite honestly, right now, I'm mostly on the range. I literally love practicing and fine tuning the feel and the stroke
Oh,
and
fun.
seeing how I can get consistent with it. So it's been a blast to do that. And otherwise, for me, it's all about music.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that. The rhythm is something that carries it. By the way, if we ever end up going golfing together, I'm not as much as I would love consistency. I care most about being good enough not to slow up the person I'm with.
Yes, I totally get that. Yeah, which is why I haven't gone out on the course yet, because I have a fear of what that's going to mean for the people I'm playing with, or the
Yeah.
ones
Oh,
after me.
if you have a will, there will definitely be a way.
Yes.
All right. So let's talk about when you're talking about you and how you presented stuff so far. The
Yeah.
values I'm hearing that are credible, clearly of service to others, so servant
Yeah.
leadership. I'm hearing coachability.
Yeah.
I'm hearing intent and commitment to do the right thing. And this is what's really cool, not just for others, but to yourself, but
Yes.
for yourself. Yeah.
Yes. I, I
Yeah, I
I
love that.
honestly believe whatever I'm providing to, as a coach to my executives or to a team of an executive team, honestly, I'm the first participant in terms of what needs to be learned. It's like
Mm,
I always think in terms of how am I not being as accountable as I could. I created my first, accountability program back in 1985. So we're talking about I've been doing this for a long time. People want to call me the expert. I'm a student of accountability. And will always be a student of accountability for myself as well as for others, just in terms of learning and how do we get to that next level. So but I always have to look first inside before I can expect someone else, you know, to be better at what I'm trying to be there for. So
Mark, you mentioned a number of things. There's many to unravel, but let's just say if your CPOP is organizations looking for a cure,
yeah.
I'm going to say I'm very curious to have you tell me more. What's that mean to you?
Yeah. Right now, there's huge struggle returning to office, struggle in trying to get that right, struggle in how do we recreate our culture from a point where we're all in the building together to now we're hybrid at best case. Some of us are in the office, some of us are remote. How do we create a culture? Um, how do we get ourselves out of the silo thinking that we might have started as an entrepreneur, but now all of a sudden, as our organization is growing, we have to create critical business thinking and ownership across the organization that includes others and not just say in a silo where we then we solve a problem for ourselves that create three problems for other departments. Like we've got to get past and where our current paradigms have been to enter a new world with new generations that communicate differently. I mean, greater diversity, more unknowns. We got an economy that everyone's afraid of is a downturn in the economy. How do we deal with all that? So to me, what we have to understand is that if we don't create strength within our organizations, if we don't create the stability, then we all of a sudden become, you know, vulnerable to all these other changes around us. And what I'm seeing a lot of leaders doing is they're trying to get control of it, have the right answers. You can't do that in this day and age. Everything is changing. Everything is so we are entered a new land of business that we have never seen before. And old rules are simply not going to work. So for me, that's where people are in so much pain and struggle and almost suffering, to the point where you've got the great resignation. People are leaving organizations for money and for other opportunities and simply not wanting to be burned out anymore. These are, to me, all the issues that organizations are dealing with that, quite honestly, you can get through without all the struggle and suffering.
So with the great resignation
Yeah.
comes two other trends that I've heard. The great rehire
hmm
and the great restructure.
hmm
Tell me what you think about that.
You know, first of all, the hiring and the leaving and the hiring and the leaving, that's just going to continue um, until we start to realize that when people leave an organization, we used to say people are leaving their manager. Well, people are leaving the culture. And when we don't have a solid culture that we feel loyal to, that we feel cared for, that we feel supported in, that we feel we can grow in, we're going to go somewhere else. And the grass always looks greener somewhere else. In terms of restructuring, it to me is so interesting because we oftentimes view structure as the solution to things. But in reality, it's not the structure as much as how do we execute within that structure. I don't care what the structure is.
Mm.
If you're still not open to new ideas, if you're still not embracing
Ah,
cross-functional teamwork,
I'm
I
gonna
don't
I'm
really
gonna
care what
I'm
the
gonna
structure
interrupt. I'm
is.
gonna interrupt for a second because that's not what I meant by that word.
Oh,
So,
okay.
by the way, so it's a great. By the way, this is a great opportunity for those that are listening because sometimes we say a word and it's interpreted differently. So, for me on structure, I was kind of thinking that we need to change what is the concept of a corporation, and we
Yes.
need to change the concept of, like, we're using the word culture, but and you used the word earlier in the conversation, community,
Mhm.
right? It's how do we make sure if we're hiring people into our company that we have the same goals, that we have the same desires, that we work together versus work against each other. I still run into salespeople and sales manager who pit different salespeople against each other,
Yeah.
right? Because it works.
Yeah.
And I want to say, just because it works doesn't mean you should do that. There are other ways to build, in this case, teamwork and camaraderie and
Well,
wanting to be part of a bigger company.
and when people say it works within the paradigm that they're in. That doesn't mean that if you tried something different, you might get a much better result in a whole different paradigm. See, that's the issue. Is like, yeah, it works to the level of the constraints that we've put it in. But I want to take myself out of that constraint and say, no, the world is opening up to be this big. Why are we still playing in this big? And
Agreed.
so, uh, you know, anytime you have silo separation and people pitted against each other, yeah, it's going to work in a very micro level. But at the end of the day, collective intelligence is going to outbeat it. At the end of the day, if we're not learning from other people, then we are literally becoming stagnant and eventually obsolete. If we're not looking for new ways to address the changing marketplace in terms of sales, in terms of becoming less transactional and more strategic and more of a business partner, that is all about partnership. That is not about let me be siloed in my way of doing it and think I'm going to compete, battle to battle. That just doesn't make any sense. The new world.
So I'm listening to you,
Yeah.
and what I'm hearing, so there's one thing I want to repeat that you said. First, you said things will no longer or never go back to normal. By the way,
Right.
I so agree. There is actually, first of all, I don't even know what normal was, and
Normal.
I'm not convinced
That's right.
normal was right in terms of a
Right.
right or wrong. I'm
Right.
not sure normal. When I went to school, I was taught that customer service was important. But then when I went to the workforce, every company I was in, the way they paid their workforce was
Right.
not focused on customer service at all. In
That's right.
today's world, there's so many competitors, there's so much opportunity to get exactly what you want in real time that if you're not of service, so this is one of your core values, being of service
Yeah.
to others and yourself, and you're not coachable, because what worked today won't work tomorrow. What worked
That's
yesterday
right.
certainly won't work today. Work tomorrow may no longer work. So what does that mean? Well, if you're the big cheese, okay, let's just do that for a second. If you're the big cheese, you get to learn from the people who are working with you. You get to be coachable by those people working with you. And you know what? There may be somebody who is 2, 3, 4 levels down who has the answer. And all you have to
Right.
do is listen.
That's right. That's right. And the big problem I run into more often than not is that when I think I'm the smartest person in the room, then I think I have all the answers, even in areas that I have no expertise. That's the laughable part because they're generally smart
Mm,
and have created a great business. They think they're experts in everything. They don't even listen to the people who are actual experts in their particular field. That is to me that stuck old paradigm. And it's again, it's a paradigm of control, it's a paradigm of arrogance,
mm,
and it's not a paradigm of learning, which to me the game is about learning now. We are all experimenting in this new world as it continues to change. Whether it's supply chain issues, whether it's pandemic issues, whether it's economic issues, whether it's societal trends, all of this is all up for grabs right now. And we have to be as adaptable and observing and learning and modifying as much as possible, experimenting, modifying, experimenting, modify, rather than let's come up with the right answer. Let's think about it hard enough until we have the right answer, which is exactly what I'm seeing a lot of organizations do around return to office, or even how do we, the question of the day from a CEO, well, how do we get back to our old culture?
mm.
I go, what role of leadership does that entail? When is it ever going back to something? Why aren't you creating and leading into the future of what the new reality is? Because there is a new reality.
And
That
by the
to
way,
me is
the interesting part, the misperception that that CEO might have is that that old culture actually worked.
right. That's
It it
exactly
it
right.
it may have worked because society didn't have a strong enough opinion to say, "Hey, personal life is as, or in this case, potentially more important than business life,"
Right.
and they don't want to put up with. Mark, I have to tell you, one of my cousins is in the Long Island area.
Mhm.
So in Long Island, a 2 hour commute to work in downtown New York was normal, right? And
Right.
and for years, 2 hours both ways, 4 hours a day, right? And every 5 days a week, and right. And at first, and I just asked her about this the other day. At first, it was like her immediate desire. Oh yeah, I can't wait till I get back into the office. I can't wait till I get back into. And
Yes.
then within 2 or 3 months, it was, I think I could make this work. And now it's, there's no way I want to get back to commuting 4 hours a day.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm,
And that to me is the new world we're in, and that's where we have to reshape. And to me, the biggest advocacy that we can ever have right now is our team, because those are the
yes.
people we work with and depend on. What's going to work for our team, and can we make exceptions for individual team members and still honor team agreements? Yes, that's part of support. And how do we, we talk about diversity in terms of different groupings. We're all diverse. Each individual is diverse, and even within myself I'm diverse. So how am I listening to myself and how am I listening to others and honoring that at the same time being outcome driven enough that says we need to be of service to our customers and to our business or we don't have a job. It's like it's not complicated.
Hmm.
And once we all get that and we all help each other, oh my God, it's so fun being at work, even with challenges.
That's interesting. So bringing Disneyland, bringing fun into work. I can tell you that I don't think I've ever had a CEO I worked for who those are the words that came out of their mouth.
Yeah. Well, because they're we generally are operating out of fear that we're not going to be successful enough or hit our goals. And that fear drives the control that then causes restriction and contraction. But the idea is I'm not about having fun for the sake of fun. I want people that actually have fun winning. I want to be with people who have fun keeping agreements with each other and feeling what it's like to have great communication and to have a struggle that we then all help to get out of. That's fun. So it's not
Mm,
fun with just games and let me do, yeah, you could do that too. There are organizations, some of the high tech ones that bring in, ping pong and pool, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, do we have fun being with each other, striving for a common goal and achieving it, and not having to deal with all the nonsense that gets in the way for us being effective, where I can work super hard and still not be successful because there's a breakdown in our process or policies or systems or whatever that is. That's really frustrating. Let's remove the frustration. Let's remove the struggle, the suffering. What we're left with is fun, striving, working together, growing together, supporting each other. I mean, look at the Olympics and how many times athletes are actually excited for someone else's win, even though we're competing against each other. But boy, to watch excellence is so inspiring. How often do we
mm.
replay excellence in Steph Kerr and in the NBA championships to say, wow, that was so elegant, and boy, what can I learn from that? I mean, it's amazing. It's so wonderful.
I am so I got lost in thinking about in a good way the
Yeah,
visuals associated with fellow athletes supporting each other from both sides, from either
yes,
side. From
yes,
like there was yeah, yeah, it's fascinating.
absolutely.
Hmm. Ah, gives me chills. All right,
Yeah.
so Mark, what question should I have asked you that I didn't? We're talking about your values and other things, but what didn't I ask you?
Well, I think the one thing that we didn't talk about is the importance of everybody being committed to their own growth. And how do we get to a place where we remove our unresolved issues that keep us stuck, that keep us limited, that keep us from achieving our goals, that keep us in fear of risking ourselves or showing up in our biggest self? Because that's the one thing that in organizations we don't spend enough time growing people from the inside out in terms of who we are and how we're showing up in our zones of genius and in our uniqueness, which everyone has, and really making that come alive. That to me is a big part of what's missing, in my view, from the conversations around leadership development or employee development. We've got to grow ourselves from the inside out. And then we have to do that same thing within organizations. Let's grow ourselves from the inside out. The excellence will come if we get if we start to grow ourselves to step up to higher, more expansive levels where we're not afraid of failure and we're not afraid of success and the responsibility that comes with it because we've handled our own issues.
Thinking about that, that's a bigger systemic issue. I mean, that comes down to our educational system,
Yes.
where we're taught to go to school, we're taught to be cogs in a wheel, in essence, to be sheep. We're taught that we're going to learn everything we need to know. And by the way, I still love the book. Everything you need to know, you learned in kindergarten, because you learned how to
Yes.
be human in kindergarten. Then you went to the rest of the one through 12 and college, and you were taught how to find the answer in the back of the book,
Yeah.
right? You were
Yeah.
not taught how to be a critical thinker.
That's right.
You were not taught how to continually love learning and growing, which clearly is part of your ethos.
Yes. Yes. And quite honestly, my biggest challenge. That's for me, my biggest challenge. How do I continue to remove my own, get out of my own way and allow my bigger self to show up and play on the field as if it's the Super Bowl?
Hmm.
That's that to me is my continual work. And I think for all of us, that's the journey because ultimately that's where we learn true self-care, self-respect, self-love, self-honoring, and how we can be of greatest service to others.
I got a quick question. Why is that of challenge for you personally?
Oh, it because I still deal with the unresolved issues that I grew up with in whatever paradigms, whether it was,
Hmm.
my dad in particular saying, "Mark, you're not a good decision maker." Now, he told me that when I was 5 years old, but it stuck.
Uh, uh, so, Mark,
Or
I've
it's
known you long enough. I'm just going to say your dad didn't have that right, Mark. You're a good decision maker. Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. But no, and it happens along the way. I mean, I was told by my math teacher as a junior in high school that I should stop taking math and drop out because I'm not good at it. And then
Uh,
I've had to become a math teacher to overcome that. So it's like we all have whatever we grew up with or whatever we interpreted against ourselves or to come up with a solution at a time that we no longer need that has been a constraint. So for me, it's all about how do I show up bigger than I've been? And I'll
hmm.
tell you, I had a strong inferiority complex around my intelligence up until about 10 years ago, and that
Wow.
was after I've written books and had success in the field. But it doesn't matter because if I'm looking for acknowledgement or validation from outside and I don't feel it within, it doesn't really
No,
stick.
and that's part of how we've been taught. We've been taught right or wrong. We've been taught
Yes.
to push on to actually deliver limiting beliefs. Maybe that's what organizations looking for a cure. It's to get rid of the limiting beliefs
There
that
you go.
every component of the organization is a positive one that can add value.
Yes. And let's just take that. Let's translate that for the audience for 1 second. One limiting belief is micromanagement. Right
Hmm.
there. Micromanagement is based on a limiting belief that when I delegate to someone else, they're not going to be able to get it done well enough. And then they prove it to me because I don't give them the clear outcomes that they're supposed to achieve. So they have to mind read that. And then when they work super hard but don't match the outcomes, then all of a sudden I think I have to micromanage to get them to perform. When in reality, what really would help, why don't you state what the criteria for success is instead of how to get it done, what needs to be accomplished, and then you see people show up in their brilliance.
Hmm. Oh, that was brilliant. I'll bet you have somewhere a list of 30, 25, 30 organizational limiting beliefs. If
You
not,
know,
that is something worth creating. That would be
yeah,
pretty
I don't
powerful.
think I do have it. I think I know some of them, but you are absolutely right. That's the best advice anyone has given me in the last month. And that includes the other advice you've already given me to
Oh,
show up today, which is great. But no, that's absolutely great
that's
advice.
a cool.
Really. And
Yeah,
boy, that what a great assignment for any organization. What are our limiting beliefs that are keeping us stuck?
I love that. Hey, listen, if
Thank
if
you.
you're watching or you're listening and you think your corporation, your organization is looking for cures reaching out to Mark Samuel is the right thing to do. Mark, how best can people reach out to you?
Oh, it's so simple. Go to reimagineteams.com.
Mm,
And that's based on our last book, but it's more than the book. You're going to see everything that we do from that spot. There's great things to for assessments you can take, articles you can read, videos you can watch. So it's really there designed to give everything. But the point of it is that we've got to get away from individual thinking to we've got to make our teams work well, whether they're
mm,
functional teams, cross-functional teams, leadership teams. I don't really care, but we have to do it in community together, well coordinated, purpose driven. Then we have a fun culture. We don't
mm.
create organizational culture as an organization. We create it team by team.
Love that. Mark, thank you so much. And now it's your turn. You're still here watching, listening. It's time to spread some cred dust on Mark Samuel. Click on the like button, share with your friends. We'll see you at the next episode. Mark, thanks so much. Take care,
Thanks so
everyone.
much, Mitchell. And thanks for your